Apparently, she had never finished atonement. Amie's arm was stretched painfully under her bed, fingers splayed, feeling for a pen that had seemingly rolled into oblivion, when her thumb brushed unexpectedly against the spine of a book. She pulled out the paperback, covered in a light layer of dust, and saw that her bookmark, gold-plated and monogammed, a gift from her ex-boyfriend that had long stopped reminding her of their brief intertwinement, still rested in the furrow between pages. 2/3 of the way through, Amie had been reading the novel back in March, and she couldn't believe she had forgotten about it. She had been so engrossed in the story, but she had nodded off that night, the night the boxes arrived. With the book sleeping next to her in bed, and in the commotion of the following morning, the novel must have slipped off the duvet and into the past, a sudden relic of the days before. Amie held the book in her hands, remembering that morning. She had slept in late, as usual, a habit that her sister Nina never understood. Unwilling to extradite herself from the night's reverie, no doubt inspired by her reading. In the dream, she was a student at Cambridge in the 1930s, courted by a young man who spoke like Hugh Grant, and Amie remembered feeling faintly disappointed to have woken up alone in bed. At the time Amie rolled off her mattress that morning, Nina had already left 2 panicked voicemails. She was only a year older than Amie, but had long deemed herself the voice of authority. "Call me as soon as you get this," Nina shouted into the phone. "Don't go outside yet. Don't do anything. Just call me first, please." Nina hadn't believed in the box's inscription and wanted to wait until she had met with her news team at work. But the truth was Amie wouldn't have looked away. These boxes had shown up everywhere, clearly powerful beyond belief. The world had somehow tripped and tumbled through the looking-glass, and Amie had read enough novels to recognize that this was part of the story where nobody knew what the hell was going on, where the characters made rash decisions whose consequences would only be revealed chapters later. Fortunately, the strings had arrived in the middle of spring break, so nobody at the Connolly Academy had to make the last-minute decision to cancel classes. Very few schools had actually cancelled that day, though Amie heard that most classrooms were only half full, with both students and teachers failing to turn up. Your students will, of course, have questions. The principal had addressed the staff the following Monday, and I'm sure that you all have formed your own opinions by now. But we cannot go telling our students anything we don't know for certain. The teacher next to Amie had leaned in and whispered, "So, basically that means we can't say anything at all?" More than a month had passed since then. The gravity settled over the world. But the situation at school felt largely unchanged, the administration still trying to shelter its students as much as possible. Access to YouTube had even been blocked on school property after a teacher realized that half of the pupils in the cafeteria were watching videos of a teenage boy attempting various means of destroying his parents' strings. The teachers later watched some of the clips in their lounge, and Amie looked on anxiously as the boy tried cutting the strings with pruning shears, dipping them in a fizzy homemade acid concoction, pulling strenuously on one end while his bulldog chomped down on the other. "Look, I certainly don't want the kids getting inspired by these stunts or watching them in my class," Amie recalled her colleagues saying. But we can't just act like it's not happening. I can't keep teaching them history and pretending like we're not living through it right now. In a way, Amie thought, wasn't that incredible? She was well aware of the pain and the strings had wrought. Nina's girlfriend, Mara, had a short string, but Amie still hadn't opened her own box, so she could still see the world through unsullied eyes, and though she would never admit this in front of anyone, there was something almost thrilling about the string's arrival. Frightening and confusing, of course, but also perhaps wondrous. As a child, she imagined herself swept up by adventure, stepping inside the magical wardrobe, touring the chocolate factory, tessering through time. Once when she skinned her knee while playing outside, she even pressed her finger in the tiny wound and smeared a few droplets of her blood on her cheek, envisioning herself as a warrior princess in the faraway land, to Nina's germophobic display. And now the fantastic, the unbelievable, had suddenly entered her world, and she was there to witness. Amie stood up slowly from her bedroom floor, atonement in her hand. She had a few more papers to grade, and then she was eager to finish reading. But she realized, as she placed the novel atop her dresser, that this was the first time the world outside of her books had ever rivaled the stories with its very own plot twist.